Hey, everybody. If you're listening to this, you are listening to the first free hour of this episode of The Shift with Doug McKenty. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the show in order to access the full feature-length versions of the podcast, as well as have access to the members forum, where we discuss potential topics and interviews and dive deep into the overall concept of the shift. For only $6 a month, not only do you get the full-length episodes, but also an opportunity to co-create with me, your host, Doug McKenty, the future of the show. Go to www.theshiftnow.com or patreon.com/theshift and sign up today in order to help make the shift possible. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Good morning, noon, or night, whenever and wherever you are listening, you're listening to The Shift. I'm your host. My name is Doug McKenty. This episode was recorded on March 16th, 2021. Today on the program, I'm happy to introduce Alexandria Russell, multi-dimensional communicator and curator of the Guardian Alliance website. Over the past year, our society and our world has gone through momentous changes as a result of many governments' reaction to the presence of the COVID-19 virus. Initially, I thought it was important to cover these events closely and allow those in disagreement with the corporate government narrative a platform to express views and provide information from outside the mainstream. As time passed, I became increasingly frustrated with the level of denial expressed culture-wide concerning these alternative views, as many staunchly defended the corporatist narrative while claiming any alternative to be conspiracy theory, despite well-organized arguments utilizing primary source and peer-reviewed scientific papers in their defense. As we all know by now, in many cases censorship is used to silence opposing views rather than engage in rational discussion, as would be characteristic of any society founded on freedom and the principles of basic human rights. In an attempt to understand what appeared to me to be an almost bizarre and certainly frightening turn of events surrounding the lockdowns, I began production of the Psychology of Lockdown series, utilizing the tenets of family systems therapy to describe what appears to be a dysfunctional relationship between government and citizen that mirrors a dysfunctional family with an abusive and controlling patriarch. Those abused often suffer a form of mystification brought on by trauma that results in a skewed version of reality that bypasses critical thinking, engages fight or flight mechanisms, and causes the victim to engage in a type of Stockholm syndrome that justifies the abusive behavior rather than identifying it for what it is. While the language of psychology helps to understand the observed cognitive dissonance and science denialism, as well as the fear of engaging in the rational conversations characteristic of a free society, simply understanding the mechanism of control does little to mitigate what appears to be an empowered and expanding totalitarian state. Having said that, I'm going to start having more episodes of The Shift concern the topic of health and wellness. It's time to focus on the community at large in order to ensure that those of us who exist outside of the corporate-sponsored matrix have the skills and abilities that it takes to survive and even thrive during difficult times. For those seeking an alternative path to health and wellness, the Guardian Alliance is a great place to start. In this interview, Alexandria and I will discuss the six-pointed program developed by founder Adam Apollo and others that blends ancient and modern knowledge into a system of integrated wholeness that describes physical and mental well-being in terms of the subtle energetic forces at work within all living beings that provide health, physical strength, and even extrasensory abilities when cultivated and properly balanced. Describing the program as a Jedi training, a pop culture reference that alludes to an ancient Egyptian sect that practiced internal alchemy, the Guardian Alliance takes the initiate through 6 powerful energy points that exist along the center line of the body, provides the characteristics of each, and presents methodologies to connect with, then enhance the powers and qualities provided by those points. The system taps into many wisdom traditions, including Hinduism, Taoism, sacred geometry, and indigenous knowledge, then backs up these concepts with a cutting-edge understanding of quantum mechanics and unified field theory. The introductory courses are both informative and affordable, and the compendium of knowledge is presented in a format that's easy to understand, yet provides valuable information for beginners and more experienced practitioners alike. Find out more about the Guardian Alliance at www.guardian.is. As always, find hours of free content and subscribe to the newsletter for up-to-date information on new productions from The Shift at www.theshiftnow.com. If you like what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, and share this episode throughout your social media network. We rely on listeners like you for distribution of this podcast. Without further ado, I'd like to thank Alexandria for agreeing to this interview, and thank you for helping to make The Shift. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 73rd episode of The Shift. I am really happy today to be talking about solutions. So many of these podcasts, especially since the coronavirus and the lockdowns and everything that's been happening, has been just kind of revealing the negative aspects of what's going on. But we got to take time out, take a few breaths, and figure out, what are the solutions to these problems? And as I was scoping out the internet one day, for whatever reason, I discovered an organization called the Guardian Alliance. They have an academy online that has done just what I thought was an incredible job of amalgamating ideas cross-culturally from all over the world into a very tight package that not only includes a lot of ancient ideas, indigenous wisdom, Taoist ideas, Hindu ideas, sacred geometry, but also then incorporates that with a lot of the modern physics concepts that we're getting with quantum mechanics and unified field theory. And it just does a great job of not only creating a complete package in terms of a lot of these ideas from around the world about how the internal energy body system works, and the more holistic, more integrative concepts about how even reality itself actually functions, as opposed to the materialistic reductionist view that we typically get in our Western education system. But they also, they just do a great job of creating this package and then putting it forth in a way that a lot of people can understand. So I wanted to welcome Alexandria Russell to the program. She is here to help explain the Guardian Alliance to us. And then we're going to get into a pretty in-depth and interesting conversation. Some of this stuff is going to get kind of esoteric, but once you break free from the Western materialistic paradigms and start to recognize how this energetic system works. And I just want to preface this by saying essentially every other culture in the world, including medieval and indigenous European cultures, all believed in this particular type of system. So it's only been in the last a couple of hundred years, a couple of thousand years in certain places, but it's been spreading that this materialistic worldview has taken hold. So if some of these concepts sound really far out to you, just keep in mind that most people throughout history have believed in these ideas, and Alexandria is going to give us some of her own personal experiences to show us firsthand accounts of what happens when you start to really delve into this more energetic, integrative understanding of how the world works. So thanks for coming on the show, Alexandria. Really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the grand introduction.
You want to just let my audience know a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Guardian Alliance?
Yeah. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and I grew up, I guess you can say, a professional LARPer. I'm a Scadian second generation with SCA. This group is international that does medieval reenactment festivals, and it started in Europe, and now there's a branch in the U.S. But so I grew up jousting and doing like old style archery games, and
nice.
Just growing up in that whole atmosphere. So I've always kind of been a fan of Star Wars and just a huge nerd on all this stuff.
Right.
When I had moved to the West Coast about 7.5, 8 years ago, I was transferring schools. I was studying medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, herbalism, traditional medicine, biochemistry. I originally was studying sociology, and then I switched majors. And that's kind of what got me introduced to physics, because I met a lot of physics community out there at Arizona State University, and it really inspired me because I always had this personal connection to the way of the Jedi. And I always believed that like every human was a Jedi in their own way. And always obsessed with magic and things like that, and really enjoyed learning about different cultures and how they viewed magic and what they practiced, and how religion kind of took over those belief systems and rituals, but changed it a little bit, still kind of present in our lives, but we don't really realize it. And it fascinated me, and I'm grateful that I had the freedom to do that growing up. And when I was on the West Coast and I started getting introduced to the physics community, I really started expanding my mind with new concepts that helped me even understand my craft deeper. So in biochemistry, if you understand the vibrations and physics behind the way chemical compounds communicate and how chemicals are actually how they become to be, how they evolve into the world, it's really trippy. It's very vast and unique and really deep. And I almost found my true spirituality through that, of just being able to learn the mechanics of how the universe operated. And then that's what propelled my own personal journey into studying Eastern philosophy. Because I was studying Eastern medicine, I wanted to learn internal alchemy techniques and energy techniques, because I had always felt this energy around me. And my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she would always teach me about certain things from our cultures. We have Scottish, Egyptian, Powhatan, and German on that side, and so she always taught me like pagan things and how to harvest the equinoxes and stuff like that. But I always knew about this subtle energy, and I would tune into it, especially when I was around animals. Like I had a horse, and I spent a lot of time at farms and felt that connection between humans and animals. That unspoken, subtle connection was my first really tapped-in experience with what you can call the force. And so studying that in college kind of got me into all of these groups. Friends of mine in the tech industry and studying to be in the tech industry, and they brought me into their own groups and worlds of quantum mechanics and quantum theory and quantum technology, and that really started expanding my mind even further of just potentials of how humans can evolve their ability to communicate with themselves and nature by using technology for the stewardship of that relationship rather than the detachment, which is what we currently have. So I believe that technology can actually be moved into different ways that actually support us for health and our beauty of the environment, the world around us. And then through those groups, I was connected to this school where I was studying herbalism that I kind of call my hippie Hogwarts experience, because
Nice.
it was really awesome. Like it was just a random small little college that popped up in Tempe, Arizona, that teaches all forms of healing art modalities, and everybody that went there was just so awesome. I loved getting connected to that network, and through that network, I met a whole bunch of people who did environmental restoration, habitat restoration, cool stuff with the national parks out west. And that's how I ended up finding out about the Resonance Science Academy, Resonance Science Foundation back in 2015. And I wanted to go to the first Egypt trip, but I had finals that week, and so I was still really determined to get my doctorate at the time. So I worked a lot and I studied a lot, and I was at school 24/7. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
Then I slowly just realized how corrupt the medical industry is. Even in naturopathy, like it hasn't gotten as bad as allopathy, but it's getting there. Corporations are taking over. It's all about money. It's not about healing people. And it really broke my heart to really want me to be a doctor, and I wanted to be able to help people. But one of my professors in naturopathy, she gave me advice one day. She said, "You actually want to be a healer and help people. Don't get your doctorate, because they won't let you do anything, and you're basically licensed to be their salesman and pill pusher." And I believe that. That's all that happened to my grandparents growing up, and that's why I wanted to go into the system to fix it. But it's a large job. I feel like it can be fixed, but it's not part of my path. And so that's when I really started shifting gears and changing direction and started studying martial arts again because it's something I did as a kid but didn't really get into. And so when I finally started getting into it and going meetup groups in Arizona, um, a lot of my friends were taking courses at the Resident Science Academy, so I started taking courses there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I found out about Atom. And I totally just fell in love with everything they were doing and what they were teaching and what they were about. And
And that's led by Nassim Harriman, right?
yeah, 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 and I really believe that what they're doing is really important, and just putting out a unified scientific theory that can help people find solutions for environmental stewardship and having healthier, just overall human experiences. So it was really cool to learn from them, and I'm still learning from them. I always love checking in on their new courses,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I got involved in the group in Guardian Alliance. And when I first met Adam and heard about the Guardian Alliance, I like literally cried because I had always felt the call, and my soul had always been felt. I had always felt connected to, a group of Jedi, space Jedi, and essentially people who cared about being guardians for the Earth and for humanity. And yeah, it's just a huge passion of mine to be a part of that process. And it was such a blessing, and everything just kind of happened cohesively, and here I am.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so you guys just to clarify for the audience, I mean, you guys literally call this like a Jedi training, what people can go through at the Guardian Alliance Academy, and you're taking people essentially through chakra by chakra. I guess one of the things that I learned when I first found out about this, I thought, well, there was actually a link to the initial concept of the Jedi, and I did not know this, but apparently George Lucas lifted the whole idea from an ancient Egyptian sect called the Jedi. They spelled it with a D-J-E-D-I.
Yeah,
And so it has a long lineage of
yeah, because we don't want to rip off Disney.
right. Yeah, that's
No,
the
it's good. It's fundamentally in our nature. It's in our culture from ancient times. Disney was not the first to come up with that, or I guess Star Wars. But yeah, it's what I had loved when I had started as a student at Guardian Alliance, was that it gave me a way to actually apply these wisdoms to my daily life in a very short, concise, like effective manner. Because what I
Mhm.
had experienced in the overscope of this similar community that has been forming. There's just a lot of fluff, a lot of people, um, doing great things and getting really creative, but just lack of leadership and direction. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just is what it is. And I'm just a very precise person. I grew up in the science community, essentially still am. So I like to understand the mechanics of things and just know how to actually just apply the mechanics. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people who are that way, and they don't participate in a lot of these consciousness expanding things because it puts them off because it's just too fluffy for them. And so
Right.
that's kind of what I loved about the teachings of the Guardian Alliance website. And then as I got brought on, something that I bring to the table as well as courses I'm developing and the direction that we're taking the Alliance in is more of being able to get deep into these spiritual, metaphysical concepts, also with the platform and foundation that we need to have our tool belt well equipped to handle the real world and what it actually means to be an actual steward, an actual Jedi in the real world, dealing with real world problems and how to get involved and how to utilize it and wield that wisdom properly. Um, and that's what really excites me about what we can continue doing with this work is being able to bring people together for a common goal that can share knowledge and share wisdom and share experiences and teachings in ways that will be effective and fun to learn. We can teach from the kids, we can teach from the elderly.
Mhm.
Anybody can learn this that can improve your life and not appropriate any cultures or be overly religious or just, a little bit out there, and it's really good to see the way that it's received. It's really positive by a lot of people, and I've had a lot of people tell me that the way that some of these teachings are described were easier to digest than other people are teaching in certain ways. So it's really about digestibility. What I've noticed, and like being able to get people's attention and figure out what they actually want. And as students and teachers, we're both throughout our whole life. We never stop being a student, and we're always teaching, passing on our wisdom. So if we have that mindset and mentality, we can share these experiences and skills in a really beautiful, artistic way, and build community through that.
Well, I guess one of the things that's coming to mind, I'm doing this Psychology of Lockdown series right now, and I've been talking a lot in the work that I've been doing about psychology and why, why are some people followers and why are people stronger and more individuated? And individuation is the goal of at least the psychology system that I've been doing these discussions about. And the issue is, initially, we're talking about a person, and a lot of people that are raised inside of a patriarchal culture. When you're raised in, children will literally get trained like animals. I mean, even if you think about the way, and you shouldn't even treat an animal this way, but this is the way that, psychologically people are trained. I mean, they even call it operant behavioral conditioning. And a lot of our public education is based on this kind of thinking that you just train a child to be what you want them to be, instead of allowing that child to be individuated, which is a healthy person emotionally that's happy to express their own authentic self in a powerful way. And I think that's I actually took the opportunity to go through the whole first level of the Guardian Alliance Academy training, just to get a real feel for how you guys are approaching this. And it seems like that's the ultimate goal, is to take the different areas, to combine, first of all, these ideas from different cultures, from native indigenous wisdom as well as Eastern philosophy, and then apply them in such a way where you combine them with the Western science, the sort of cutting edge Western science, which is starting to, I feel like it's starting to come full circle back to some of these other cultures' awareness in terms of the unified field theory and in terms of the quantum mechanics. And so you make it accessible to a person who's been raised with the Western mind, but then as you go through the process, you're literally healing them so that they can eliminate these emotional blockages, the shaming, the traumatic experiences from their childhood, or the training from their childhood, and allowing people to kind of go through this process of learning about how to be themselves again. Does that make sense to you? Does that sound like one of the goals of the program?
Oh yeah, that's very similar to the philosophy of the Montessori schools, which I absolutely love. Yeah, and that is kind of similar to different schooling styles that I saw within dating community as well. Just really sticks to that old school, like let your kids discover themselves kind of thing.
Right.
Really encourage creative thinking and expression, and give them the security they need to feel confident in building those new pathways of thinking and innovation. It's definitely a huge goal of mine to be able to extend Guardian Alliance teaching to children and get them involved in their community and give them a voice and the power to build themselves into the life that they wish, and a small way or any kind of large significant way that is in alignment. Children really are the future, and healing it's a multi-layered process, and we never stop to the day we die. And
right.
So it's the way that we handle it and not projecting it onto younger generations is really important. That's something that I've learned from older generations, that did not have those skills, that it's up to us to be able to have the wisdom and the composure to be able to handle suffering and handle events of life in a manner that has a little bit more grace and can help support security and healthy foundations for children so that they learn how to deal with conflict, how to deal with struggle and situations with solutions and innovation and compassion rather than violence or survival mentality experiences. And that is essentially key to many human systems. It would change immediately. This newer generation acting differently just in that way. It's very, very important.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into actually how the system works, and so you basically have kind of taken the chakra system, the Hindu chakra system, the energy system, and you've applied. We've got 6 different archetypes, I guess you would call them, and applied each one to each different chakra system, and then work your way up. And I guess maybe before we talk about this, because I guess I always, because of where I come from, I mean, it took me, a few years of doing Tai Chi probably before I was like, I think this stuff is actually real.
Right. Yeah.
Like
A lot of
I had
people,
to
if they
feel it.
don't study the culture, the Hindu culture, they don't understand it until you feel it. And that's why I feel like doing Tai Chi and things like that actually get you to feel your internal energy system.
Yeah.
Because most people learn through experience. If they have a physical experience, they can understand the mechanics of what those teachings are about. And essentially how we did it with the Alliance is we're referencing that, but it's not necessarily the chakra system. It's just we're using the color spectrum.
Okay.
But we found that there's intrinsic ancestral archetypes throughout humanity in every culture, and kind of made it our own system in that way. And essentially, it's easier to break up these teachings into archetypes so that it can be easily digested and you can understand what each archetype does for the whole and how it works together. And then everybody's going to lean towards one or another, certain type of code essentially within the archetypes. And it's cool to be able to learn in that way. And we also have been taking styles from different philosophies of learning to be able to relay this information to teach people that's engaging and fun and gets them to use their more artistic side of their brain with the logic together in synergy. And that's what I really love about physics and geometry. It activates left and right brain at the same time. It helps balance hemispheres. It's a really good equalizer in terms of something that allows you to learn a lot of other things because you now know that one mechanic. And
right.
I personally love the archetypes that Adam created just for the sense of the character that it brings. I'm a total RPG nerd and love role play games like D&D and stuff. So it kind of has that feel. Adam gamified a lot of his stuff, and I think it's great because a lot of people respond to that really well.
Will you tell people about Adam?
Engaging.
Excuse me, just so the audience has more of a frame of reference. Who is Adam, and how did he's basically the guy that founded the Guardian Alliance?
Yeah, so Adam's the founder and creator of the Guardian Alliance. He created it as a offset academy after he had created the Academy for Resonant Science Foundation, and basically took his teachings from the Resonant Science Foundation and expanded upon it in his way, which is the way of the Jedi. And all schools of practices always have their own feel and experience because of the original founder. So Adam kind of imbued his experience into this, and it's cool how each of us that come in and add our own experiences, how it evolves and changes and becomes an entire school of thought and way of life, essentially. And Adam developed the unified physics courses for resonant time formation, and that is essentially the foundation of a lot of the teachings within the Alliance and to come soon in the Alliance with how to actually train yourself with the Force, knowing the mechanics of how to actually tune into subtle energy and wield it with your body and the environment around you, and how that relates to the mind and the emotions, and being able to congeal all of these different subjects into one unified experience that leaves you well equipped to be able to kind of expand upon it on your own.
I guess, what's interesting is like I want to get into the specifics of the system, but I think maybe we should describe first to the audience a little bit more about, maybe both a little bit about the internal energy system and then the external energy system, or, however you want to approach it. But how do you describe, the world view from this perspective of energy rather than from the perspective of matter, which so many of us are used to or were raised within?
Right. I think it's the same thing essentially. It just depends on what kind of belief system and meaning we're putting behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're putting a spiritual belief system and meaning behind it, great, cool, that's going to be a perspective, but we don't need it to actually know the mechanics of how to train in this way and tap into this phenomenon and utilize it. It just makes it, in my personal experience, more deep and interconnected in a different level to put that meaning behind it. But in terms of the way we teach it, we'll kind of put a little bit of that in there. We'll hint at it, but we really don't want to focus too much on that aspect. It's more of the actual mechanics on how to do it and what it actually is, and what we have yet to discover, and what we're in the process of discovering in terms of our development in science and being able to track this phenomenon and use the language of science to be able to expand upon this work. And it's ever evolving. I mean, the things that we're teaching, it's not an absolute truth, and it's not the only thing that we're going to discover from this type of work, but it's a start, and it's the foundation, and it's the root work, and how to get ourselves capable of being able to expand into other aspects of this knowledge. And really, it's in my mind important to know both, but like everybody has their own desire on what they want to connect with. So sometimes there's students that really just want to learn the hardcore logic behind the way something works, and then there's some students who want both that and philosophy, and there's some students who just want philosophy. So the fact that it's important to have all of that present so you can make the choice on what you want to learn and what way, if you want to separate it, if you want to have it unified. But the overall unification is important for everybody to know, just for the sake of being able to debate and share knowledge.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing that actually, just being someone that was raised within the Western context, and I was taught Western, science, and I still, most of my acquaintances these days think of Western science as science. But the more that I've learned about this energetic path or the internal alchemy, or even the multi-dimensional reality that we can get into maybe a little bit later, that there's a science behind that too. It's not that it's not illogical, right?
No, yeah, it is one. It is the same. The right and left brain are the same phenomenon. It's just different ways of perceiving and expressing it. That's the fun part, the human experience, and being able to compartmentalize these things and also experience it unified. I do feel that in the future generations we'll have the ability to have that unification without having to compartmentalize it, but have both compartments capable of running in those ways together. Did you notice throughout history, a couple generations back, a couple thousand years up until now, we still struggled with the duality and the polarization, and that's really the essential nature of the Jedi is depolarizing and creating that unification.
Right.
It's a lot to handle too. It takes a lot of responsibility, and that's something that I view it as very important to remember. It's paying respect to the original cultures who taught this before Western thought, and their lines of ancestry and how they tapped into this knowledge is really beautiful. And being able to pay homage to those original elders and actually learn the knowledge from their perspective and not a Western lineage perspective, because most of Western lenses cut out the actual roots of the information we need, and so it can be referenced, but it's not effective to use the Western lens, and that's something that is of huge importance to us, especially in the way that we convey information.
Yeah, I think even God, I mean, where I've gotten to with it, the Western perspective is almost like a bad habit. It produces an almost cognitive dissonance where people can't believe that there's this energetic world. And because they don't believe it, they can't see it. They can't feel it. They don't, then it takes a real effort. I mean, it has on my own part in my own experience to kind of break free of the cognitive dissonance that I had that just didn't let me perceive things that were outside too far outside of that materialistic belief system that I was raised within. So it's just an interesting quandary, trying to teach people. I guess when I do interviews like this, I mean, I'm targeting maybe the member of the audience that would be the most skeptical, and just trying, reassure that person that, if you meditate long enough, or if you do qigong or tai chi long enough, then you too can at least start to perceive the internal energy system inside your body. And then that's what kind of opened the door for me just a crack to go, well, if that's true, then maybe all this other stuff is true too. Maybe there's something to this. So
Yeah. That's great. Well, I have about 30 minutes left. If you want to talk about our experiences,
okay.
personal experiences with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, why don't we tell the audience just to kind of go through some of the archetypes so they get the Guardian Alliance system. Like you go from chakra to chakra, and you will teach, what the color is, but what the emotion is, and then what the archetype is. So like the root chakra is the warrior energy, and then how to move through any blocked energies that might be in that chakra.
Yeah, so we start from the root up, build that foundation. The warrior is essentially the root. The ability to have dexterity in your natural world and utilizing your senses and your instincts, and mostly with the philosophies and teaching in martial arts. And it's a very grounding way to prelude into these higher philosophies, so that you get your body involved and you remember that you have to stay present in your body and to check in with yourself. And it's really important, especially in the work that we do, to be able to check in and harmonize all other aspects of our experience into a physical, because it's what carries us and it's what allows us to be here and honor it fully and authentically, so that we can thrive, essentially. And then as we move up, we go into the rebirth, which is all about emotions and our expression in life and how we network with each other and social experiences, and really changing the social landscape between the self and this other. And then the next one up, which I guess would be solar, is yellow. That one's all going to be about ambassadorship and really just like how we use our willpower to create mechanisms of change within ourselves and within our environment. And then we have the healer, which would be the heart green, which it really goes into all and anything healing modalities, and just like, what does it really mean to be a healer for the self? Because sovereignty is the absolute core of everything that we do. And when going through healing modalities, that's the number one thing that I've personally experienced in the professional field. There's a lack of sovereignty still, because we're still coming at it from old wounds, and old world paradigm wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to shift into sovereign healing modalities, we actually have to realize that we are the only ones who can heal ourselves. No matter what master we seek or what teaching we seek, we're the ones who are going to be doing the work, and we're the ones who are going to change. So it's up to us to make that difference and take the control back into our own being, and that's how we learn sovereignty. And a lot of people, surprisingly, still don't understand how to get into that mentality and that concept, and it takes them a long time to. They need a lot of support from teachers and leaders, and that's okay. Everybody has their own journey with it, and that's really what we like to teach with the healing modalities and the healer archetype is how you take charge of your own embodiment and healing process,
Right.
and how to just reflect that to others around you without, pushing people too hard on their path. Like everybody has their own pace, and that's okay. We don't have to force people or ourselves to go at a pace that is not authentic to our path. And then my super favorite is the purple and blue, the ambassador and the star walker, and mostly because I'm an inner diplomat at heart, and I love diplomatic philosophy, and I just politics forms in humanity for a reason. I don't believe that it's absolutely necessary to have it the way that it is now, because monarchy is what formed it, and monarchy is not going to survive in the new paradigm. But if we understand political philosophy with a holistic perspective, we can utilize the mechanics of it in a way that help us maintain like true democracy, true diplomacy within the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's a very big quality of just what it means to be human, and how those interactions are really important. You don't have to be a professional, whatever, have your own business or work for a high profile business in order to have ambassador or diplomatic skills. Um, it's necessary even for local communities to thrive. You need ambassadors and leadership even in the smallest, most significant ways. And then Star Walker, just really gets into all the sci-fi stuff of astral traveling and
Right.
tapping into the force itself and being able to actually utilize psychic phenomena and spiritual abilities. And I don't even like calling it spiritual abilities because it's just the innate abilities of being human,
Right.
and being an electromagnetic being on this planet full of other electromagnetic beings. So it's the way we communicate with our subtle world and the energies around us. And I love the way Adam describes his personal experiences with it and how it inspired me to really tap into my own, and that further inspired me on how to inspire others to tap into their own experiences and really test the mechanics of how somebody else figured it out and figure out what works for you. Because some people, they have a biochemical blockage on being able to astral travel. Some people it's emotional. A lot of times it's interconnected, and emotion sparks a physical response. Vice versa, a physical response usually is tied to an emotion. In my own experience, that was what has tried to free me from actual phenomena. And the more that I've accrued different techniques from other friends and teachers, has helped me kind of experiment with how my brain, my body, my soul works right now in this condition, as I'm evolving and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've figured out other techniques that other people haven't, and then I still have a lot more to learn. And the fact that that is the ever-growing aspect of our teaching and experience, not just within the alliance, but just overall within anybody, is being able to share that information, which can be sensitive subjects for a lot of people who are still stuck in certain cultural belief patterns that have fear around that sort of stuff. And we really want to encourage everybody to get out of their comfort zone and face those fears in a passionate way, and know that they're supported, not to be judged for how their experience is going to look, but to have the openness to be able to challenge themselves and their belief systems. And nobody has to give up their belief systems either. It's just a matter of being able to be tolerant to one another, and tolerant to being able to express the way that we experience or share information, so that we can share in this joy and the ability to be able to experience our reality with true sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess as you start along this path, there's going to be a couple of the archetypes that you identify with personally, but ideally, you're trying to strengthen each chakra up and down the energy system, and then you'll end up being, a pretty balanced individual, being able to use all of these different psychological forces essentially equally. I guess people will always have their favorites, but the idea is to find that balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know, I guess if you want to talk about some of the abilities that people, I mean, we've touched a little bit on the ESP and the paranormal abilities that can be cultivated. It's something that a lot of people, again, people just don't believe that it's possible. But I think, you've had some of these experiences and maybe others in the group. Do you want to talk about, I mean, what is going on like interdimensionally, or what can happen? I guess one of the things, and I mean, I've had some experiences, I guess, but the idea that there are interdimensional beings or that there's a multidimensional reality is something that's so
Yeah.
beyond what a lot of people can think about. Um, but you have had these experiences, right? And it is something that people can do. It is yet another skill that can be cultivated using these energy cultivating techniques.
Yeah. Well, just starting off with that, like what was really important to my journey was finding this community, because on the East Coast, this type of community just doesn't exist right now. And it was a little intimidating to be thrusted into, because I had been surrounded by people who didn't understand the phenomenon that I experienced. And so I had to keep that within myself, really deeply. And that's
Uh-huh.
fine. But really finding this community changed my life, because there were other people who were similar or had similar experiences that I was able to learn from and know like I wasn't alone. We all have a different way of experiencing this phenomenon, but there are other people experiencing this phenomenon and they want answers and they want to learn and they want to understand. And that's really kind of where I was at. It's just like, I need to master this thing I don't understand, and it's kind of scary. And that's why a lot of people can't tune into it, because we're so dense in our life right now and we're all stressed out and overcaffeinated, so we're not tuned into the subtle energies very easily like our ancestors used to be.
Right.
We're living very modern lives that are almost separate from nature, and we're just not connected to that energy all the time like we used to be. And so it's like a new muscle that you have to work out, and it can be painful and disorienting sometimes, and you have to take it in doses sometimes, and that just is what it is. And some people, if they live a certain lifestyle, can handle it 24/7, others can't. But what was really important for my journey into entering this community and the alliance was the fact that I wasn't alone, and I had camaraderie, and I had others that I could share my experiences with and also receive their experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's the core and the importance of why we share that, is so that others can learn how to ground themselves into that experience and not feel outcasted by societal norms that have been in place for a long, long time that are really outdated.
Do you want to share some of your experiences? Like, were you a young child and then, you started seeing ghosts and nobody else could
Oh yeah,
explain?
but yeah, I have like a couple more minutes, but I'll just like in a nutshell that
Okay.
that's essentially what I experienced. Um, and then it changed over the years, and then I met other people who were similar and had similar experiences. And it was something that was very mysterious for me, that I was very drawn to learning about. And I found that in that field of knowledge, there's still not a lot of material to pull from. And a lot of it is kind of thwarted because it's from the perspectives of one or two people, and it's heavily patriarchal in the knowledge base, just because of what was saved and copied and written down. And so there's just so much knowledge that has not been scribed and has only been passed down maybe orally or generationally, that might be lost. And so it was really important to me, was like connecting with my lines of ancestry and what they had to teach and what the subtle knowledges that weren't passed on or recorded definitively, but were within my being. And so that was what was really important to balancing that experience for me.
All right, well, that's cool. I mean, I've been going through something kind of similar, just at least in terms of understanding my tribe. I think for a long time, I felt like I had to fight, people that thought different than me, or, I was always really logical and with my political philosophy or whatever, I'm always arguing with people and trying to convince them. And only probably in the last 6 months or so was I like, I need to hang out with people who think like I do. And there's something really important about finding that community. Um, and that's one of the things that really turned me on to the Guardian Alliance, because it seems like as a group, you all are really open-minded, but you've also done a great job of integrating these ideas um, from the more esoteric and the more mystical, but then attaching them into a lot of the Western physics and the ideas that are coming out now. And you've packaged them in this way that's really accessible even to people that maybe haven't had that many experiences with the internal energy system or some of these more mystical or esoteric concepts, which become less esoteric the more you learn about them. So I think it's worth it for people to spend the time to check it out and learn as much as they can and remain open-minded to the possibilities that exist on the other side of that veil, if they're just open-minded enough to pursue it. So I know that you're running short on time. Do you have any final statements that you want to make, or you want to let people know where they can find out more information about the Guardian Alliance as well?
Yeah, just go to guardian.is and you can do the initiation course for free, and that kind of gives you a taste of what we're about, what we do, and if you like it, and keep going. If not, whatever. We really appreciate your involvement, Doug, and your enthusiasm, and thanks for sharing us and giving us a platform to speak to more people, and looking forward to more co-creations and sharing of ideas.
Yeah, sounds good. You guys have literally, dozens and dozens of people that would be perfect for my program. So let's definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, we're going to be doing revived pulse roundtable sessions via Zoom links. So it'll be a great way to network and just talk to more guardians and get people in dialogue again with one another.
All right. Sounds very good. And I will urge all of my listeners to check out the website and check out the whole system. Whether you are completely skeptical of anything that we've talked about today, or whether that you've become more advanced in terms of your understanding and knowledge of these kinds of thoughts about reality, the internal and external energy systems, going to the Guardian Alliance, I think you'll find a lot of good information there. So I urge everybody to check it out, and I'll just let people know that you've been listening to The Shift, and I am your host, Doug McKenty. You can find out more about The Shift at theshiftnow.com. I'm on Facebook. You can just look me up on Facebook at Doug McKenty, and on YouTube at The Shift, and I'm on Twitter at dmckenty. But I'm urging more and more people to go to the website, theshiftnow.com, and sign up for the newsletter. And that way, I'll keep in touch with you, send a little weekly update that gives you all of the latest episodes of The Shift and everything else that I'm working on. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And thank you, Alexandria, for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll keep people updated.
Yeah, love to stay in touch.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye. Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That's my conversation with Alexandria Russell of the Guardian Alliance. My apologies for the sound quality. There was a lot of reverb and a little bit of background noise happening in the room where she was recording. She did ask me before the recording if the sound was going to be of a good enough quality, and I thought it sounded all right to me. And then as I started to edit this one together, I kind of realized that the reverb was kind of getting in the way, so I did what I could to boost her voice. I think you can understand it fairly well, but my apologies that it wasn't a little bit clearer. It would have been nice to have been able to hear with a little more clarity what she was saying. But I think if you were listening to this one, you could catch pretty much everything of what she was saying ultimately, and so I hope it worked out for you. But my apologies. Next time we'll try to make the sound quality a little bit higher there. But I wanted to just give my notes here at the end about what I felt about the conversation, and I just think and hope that you all will think about going to Guardian.is and checking it out. I think that the system is really well put together. It incorporates a lot of ideas from a lot of different cultures, although as Alexandria was describing, they were very careful not to culturally appropriate, and I appreciate that. It's difficult to have authentic relationships with these ideas and the people that have traditionally expressed within their health systems and their scientific understandings about how the world works. Um, in a way where you're acting in a good way, where you're not just stealing concepts, or you're not posing like a Hindu or like a Taoist or like a Native American or an indigenous person, certainly. And I think they do a really good job. She even didn't really want to talk about the system as the chakra system, but just talked about how they utilize the color spectrum, and they incorporate a lot of different ideas. And when they do have people discussing different ways on the website, it's typically like an elder from an indigenous population that's actually expressing their own ideas. I appreciate that about the way they put this together. It does take ideas from all over the world, and it puts them together in this tight package about how the energetic system works. And it does so in a way that I think is really authentically striving to be very respectful of the people whose ways they're representing. And they don't really copycat, but now they're putting together a kind of this big picture system that incorporates not only these ideas from these more ancient traditions, but also a lot of the modern science, the unified field theory, and the quantum mechanics that Adam Apollo brings in to the program. So you can start to see that modern science and Western thinking is actually starting to correlate in a big way with these ideas that have been on the planet since the beginning of mankind. And I think that's very exciting. One of the things that Alexandria said that really got into my mind was that what they're doing is really integrating the left brain and the right brain, the energetic with the materialistic. And they're not really different systems. They're describing the same reality, but it's a different perspective. And finding the balance between the two is key to evolving humanity, I think, to this next level from this simply materialistic domain that so many of us have been raised in, if we've been raised in the West, and the colonialism and the imperialism that's gone along with it, and starting to understand that there's a lot of value to be had from this energetic perspective, from this holistic and integrative perspective. One of the things I really appreciate as well is that these systems, really have a comprehensive understanding of where our emotions come from, and that the energies express emotions, and that balancing the energies creates a healthy psychology. And that's something that materialism really does not explain. They never get into where do emotions come from, why our feelings are actually important, how our lives are probably actually definitely more driven by our emotions and our feelings and our intuitions than they are by this materialistic logic that so many in the West have been taught is the only way to go forward. But we all have emotions, and our subconscious and our that emotion part of us really ultimately makes a lot of the decisions, even when we think we're being logical. The reality of the world, even in a materialistic world, we've got to understand there's an infinity of variables out there. I like to think of it as the emotion system or the energetic system works like a quantum computer, whereas the logical system is simply digital. It's got an if or a then. But it doesn't incorporate the myriad of the reality, the holographic nature of the reality that's happening around us that creates an infinity of possibilities. And so ultimately, when there's an infinity of possibilities, we have to go with our gut, right? At the end of the day, you have to make a choice in any given situation, and that choice is going to come from how you feel about the situation and how you want to move forward with your life in any given situation. And so these systems, these energetic-based systems, really provide a comprehensive way of incorporating all of that reality, not just, an if or a then in a given scientific controlled experiment, but really dealing with the entire infinity of the reality around us. And another thing that she mentioned I wanted to bring up was a lot of people, especially when we're raised in a materialistic mindset, the spiritual stuff sounds frou-frou, it sounds all fluffy and, oh, this isn't based in reality, you're just making this up, this sounds frou-frou. Even the way they describe it as a Jedi training, I can kind of see where that could put some people off. But cultivating this kind of internal energy has been the foundation of the spirit paths of really all the cultures in the history of the world until we get to this Western European perspective that's now colonized much of the world, and that worldview is very prominent. But these more ancient ideas were the perspective, the sciences, as we discussed a little bit, of all other cultures in the history of the world until we get to this Western materialistic mindset. So you've got to give a lot of credence there. Clearly, people who are trying to learn how to live their best lives, trying to train to be the strongest people that they could be, were utilizing these energetic systems all over the world prior to Western materialism. And going back to having that understanding of how the world works, again, it incorporates not just the material world, but also our emotional world. Not just the logical part of our brain, but also the emotional part, the psychological part. And I think that this is a big thing about what's happening in the world today, especially post-COVID. We're seeing a lot of depression, a lot of suicide, a lot of addiction issues. People need to learn how to heal on this emotional level. And this system from the Guardian Alliance not only teaches you how to heal and balance on this energetic level, but then how to strengthen yourself until you can become a strong, individuated human being capable of making choices for yourself, not leaning on the authority to tell you what to do so you know how to act and what to do, and allowing others to make choices for you. And so I think this is really important, and it's a great place to to start on any journey to understand this energetic perspective. Also, as we discussed, introducing a lot of Western science. The modern Western science hasn't really taken on a lot of traction in the academy just yet, but unified field theory, taking quantum mechanics to the next level, and then combining the unified field theory with a lot of these ancient traditions from Hinduism or Taoism or indigenous thought, starts to open the door to other opportunities at the very end. And maybe I'll have Alexandria back because she ultimately discusses her abilities at multi-dimensional communication. She has an extrasensory perception. And these are the kinds of capabilities that you can cultivate as you progress more and more into this energetic universe. The whole way of looking at life from this energetic point of view, it really opens up a different kind of cosmology rather than simply materialism where we have to travel from here to the moon, to the sun, to the center of the galaxy, etc. There becomes much more of an internal world view that includes a multidimensional world view that includes beings that live in these alternate dimensions. Ideas like astral travel become possible, and lots of other forms of telepathic communication, things like that. They even talk a little bit about UFOs and extraterrestrial beings that are multidimensional beings that you can get in touch with, theoretically. So again, a lot of this stuff sounds kind of frou-frou, but at the Guardian Alliance, they take you step by step. And again, all other cultures in the history of the world have believed all of these things. They only sound strange or odd to those of us that were raised inside this Western materialistic paradigm. Most cultures very much believe in extraterrestrials, very much believe in a spirit world, and very much believe and experience beings in other dimensions. So, in the Guardian Alliance, you'll get introduced to ideas like the Akashic Records and multiple layers and levels of consciousness, the auras, the energetic auras, not just the internal, like the Chinese medical system with the internal energy system and how it works with all of your emotions and through all of the organ systems, etc. But then the aura systems that surround your body, the torus system that is the energetic system of your entire body, and then they connect it in again with things like sacred geometry and then modern physics, unified field theory, and holographic universe theories. So very interesting stuff. Also very affordable. I think if you just want to go through the first circle, they call it, the first 6 steps, and learn the basics, they ask for, I think it's $19.99 a month, but on a sliding scale. So you can really do this, and it probably would take you could do it in a month if you really wanted to. So much information for next to nothing. If you don't feel like you can afford the $20 a month, I think it goes down to maybe even $8 a month. And literally hundreds of hours of video content with experts, as well as just hundreds of pages of written content to describe the different archetypes, the 6 different archetypes, how the chakra system works. You get a little bit of Tai Chi, Qigong, and you talk to a lot of different experts in different fields that have been studying this energetic system and can really give you a very holistic understanding of how it works, combining, again, knowledge from all over the world, both modern and ancient. So I would recommend at least checking it out, see if you like it, and maybe take a month and go through some of the classes, see what you think. And at least learn a little bit about how this alternative worldview can function and can function for you in terms of not just making you a healthy person and healthy and balanced psychologically, which is extremely important, and emotionally, but also physically, and then making you into a stronger and stronger person the more you cultivate these types of energies, until perhaps even you too could be able to experience some of these extrasensory perceptions, or become almost Jedi-like in terms of your interaction with the world around you, and manifesting abundance and manifesting health in your reality. So again, you can check it out at guardian.is. And I want to thank Alexandria Russell for coming on the show. Maybe I'll have her back on so that we can really take a deep dive into this extrasensory perception aspect of things. It is getting a little bit more far out than this show usually goes, but I'm kind of getting ready to go there. I'd like to start to make the shift from just this materialistic reality where we're talking a lot about politics, economics, conspiracies, etc. on that level, and getting into some of these more psychological and energetic and spiritual topics, because I think that heading in this direction is where we need to go if we want to create a thriving world for the 7th generation. And understand, at least understand that we need to have a balance between materialism and this energetic, holistic view of things so that we can move forward in a better way for the future. The materialism clearly comes with colonialism, imperialism, and this warlike behavior, this patriarchal system, this unsustainable economic behavior. It's just not tied into the cycles, and it's not tied into the energies of the universe and the Mother Earth. And so we need to, I think, open our minds to these alternative possibilities. Again, check them out, guardian.is. And thanks, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to The Shift. I've been your host, Doug McKenty. You can find my stuff at www.theshiftnow.com. I urge all of my listeners to go there and sign up for the newsletter. That way we can circumvent any of the big tech censorship that's clearly been not just coming down the pike, but that's happening to a lot of independent reporters these days. And next week, I've got Julianne Romanello coming on. We're going to talk a little bit more about technocracy, but also take a deep dive into one of her favorite philosophers, Eric Voegelin, where we're going to get into the difference between indoctrination and education and art and propaganda. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation with the backdrop from Eric Voegelin. We have he's really influenced by Plato, so we're going to get into some ancient Greek philosophy and talk Western philosophy in general from this, I think, really good point of view. So be looking forward to that one. All right, thanks everybody for checking this one out. Again, you can find more stuff at www.theshiftnow.com, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.